Masechet Yevamot Daf Yod Zayin. We're talking about various places in Bavel that are basically non-Jewish cities and areas, but where we suspect there may have been Jews there before. They perhaps were captured in war or exiled, and so places where we know the northern 10 tribes were exiled to, and they are part of Bnei Israel. So if we think that there are remnants of Bnei Israel in these various places, then we have to worry that, in fact, some of them are Jewish. And therefore, if they are Jewish, but they haven't been keeping halacha, then they're not going to be careful with laws of marriage and divorce and have cases of adultery causing mamzerut. And so therefore, we have to worry that the people that live there may be mamzerim, and we will not want to accept converts from those places. In addition, we ended off with this statement of Rav Yehuda, who said in the name of Rav Aseh that if a non-Jew from one of these areas goes ahead and does kiddushin with a Jewish woman, we have to worry that perhaps that kiddushin is effective. Even though if we know for sure they're not Jewish, then the act of kiddushin is meaningless. But because they may be one of the remnants of the northern 10 tribes, they may be Jewish, and so the kiddushin may take effect. So we're going to ask them to get a divorce just in case they were in fact married. And then the Talmud went ahead and listed a few of those places. And all of these places we have to worry about mamzerut. Okay, now Rav Yehuda said that in the name of Rav Aseh, but then he said, Ki amrita kamed Shmuel amar li, bincha haba min ha-Yisraelit karoi bincha, ve'en bincha haba min ha-Goya karoi bincha ela bena. Shmuel disagreed and he said, no, you don't have to worry about it. If someone from one of these places that's basically Goyim comes and does kiddushin, we don't have to worry that that's an effective kiddushin. Why? Because the rule is that if your son meaning a Jewish man, goes ahead and takes a Jewish woman, that is called your son, right? That's officially part of the nation, fully Jewish. But your son, meaning a Jewish man who cohabits with a non-Jewish woman, is not called your son. In other words, it goes by matrilineal lineage, and therefore, if the mother is not Jewish, the child is not Jewish. Ela bena, it's hers, and therefore you don't have to worry. So that if the Jewish men intermarried with a non-Jewish woman, the kids would not be Jewish anyway, and therefore we don't have to worry about mamzerut in these places, and it's okay. But now we ask obvious question: V'haika banot? What about Jewish women? Right? If they go and intermarry by force or not by force, it doesn't matter, and to have children, then they will be Jewish, and they're officially Jewish, and they're living among these non-Jews and not following any of the Jewish law. So then we have to worry about mamzerut, right? We have an answer. Two answers. Ravina added to that and said, when you have a Jewish woman, ben bitecha, if you have a son from a daughter, and where the father was not Jewish but the mother is Jewish, that is called your son, right? In other words, your daughter's son is Jewish, even if the father of that grandchild is not Jewish. So that's the question. What are you going to do with that? That also happened. So the first answer is Gemiri de Benata Dahu Dara Istaruye Istaru. Interesting that during the exile of the 10 tribes, that generation became barren, either as a consequence of the travails and travels. The women became barren, or perhaps they made themselves barren so that they would not have children when the enemies raped them. Either way, they made sure they did not have children. So since the women did not have children, there were no kids, no babies from them, and no Jews that were their descendants. Only the men may have cohabited with non-Jewish women, and those kids would not be Jewish. And so therefore, we can be assured that even though we know these various cities where the northern 10 tribes went to, we can be assured that their descendants are not Jewish. That's what Shemuel says, we can assume they're not Jewish. If they come and do Kiddushin, it's nothing. If they want to come and convert, we could accept them. Or another answer. The other version is that when Rav Yehuda said this halacha in front of Shemuel, he said, hey, Rav Aseh said it's prohibited. Shemuel says, no, not so. That the sages that were there at the time, they would not budge until they declared all the people in those cities to be complete non-Jews. The reason is not because of lineage. Maybe they did have children, even the woman had children, but because they lived in these idolatrous places and followed ways of idolatry, so they went against God, and their sons were strange sons to them. In other words, the sages at that point established that these people went off the Derekh. They are not in Israel. They're not following any Jewish ways. And therefore, we declare them to be not part of the Jewish people. This is quite an amazing and surprising statement, because in other places, we usually apply the rule, Yisrael, afal pi shechata, Yisrael hu. A Jew, even if a Jew is sinning and does, violates every single law, it's not good, but nevertheless, they remain a Jew no matter what. You can never undo your Jewish status. And that's a basic halacha. And this says the opposite. Perhaps it's just a machloket. Perhaps that the Yisrael Chata refers to individual Jews that in some family, someone goes ahead and and leaves the ways of the Jewish people. Nevertheless, they're Jewish. Whereas here we're talking about an entire group, a whole city, a whole tribe. And so that whole group can in fact be lost. Or maybe this was a one-time event that the sages at that point decided that we are going to declare these people not Jewish. So it could be an exception to the rule. Okay, so different ways to resolve these two, but there is a concept here that someone that moves out and is completely unassociated with the Jewish people and is in fact living with idolaters and like them, then they can actually lose their Jewish status, and therefore we don't have to worry about their kiddushin. Good. Yatev Rav Yosef achored Rav Kana, vitev Rav Kana kamed Rav Yehuda, vitev ka'amar. So there's various sages, some from the second and third generations of Amoraim, were sitting and saying, Atidin Yisrael davdei yomatava ki charbet Talmud. He says one day the Jews are going to make a festival, a holiday, when Talmud is destroyed. Talmud meaning Palmyra, that we talked about before. A city where we suspect that some of the people there may be descendants of Jews, but mamzerim, because of various wars. Or maybe going back to the time of Shlomo, when the servants of Shlomo took Jewish women. Anyway, we're going to celebrate one day when the city is destroyed, right? And this probably reflects that there was a lot of tension between the government of Palmyra, which was an independent unit separate from the Roman Empire, and they had tension with the nearby Jewish communities. So they said one day we're going to celebrate that it's destroyed. And now the Talmud asks, wait a second, it already was destroyed. Okay, this is funny, because it seems that when they were sitting, the city was destroyed, Palmyra was destroyed in 273 CE by the Romans. And so the second generation Amoraim here may have been alive and saying that before 273. But after they said that, then the later layer of the Talmud is quoting it and wondering, wait a second, it is already destroyed, right? And so what did they mean by that? Perhaps not realizing that they said this before it was destroyed. So now that it is destroyed, right? What is that? What does it mean? He Talmud Havai, and the answer is no. That was talking about Talmud, a different place. The Talmud was destroyed, Talmud was not destroyed. That's what we're still hoping to be destroyed. Okay. Rav Ashi Amad, Hainu Talmud, Hainu Tamud. This is no, Rav Ashi gives a different answer. It is in fact the same place with two slightly different names. Ich Polehu de Michpal, but it's a doubled city. It has two parts. Charib Mehai Gisa, Oti Mehai Gisa. Vi Charib Mehai Gisa, Oti Mehai Gisa. That one, sometimes one half is destroyed, but then the other half is settled. And then at other times, the other half is destroyed, but the first half gets resettled. So we're hoping for a day when the entire city gets destroyed, all of it, because until now, only part of it has been destroyed. Okay, but historically, probably a statement was talking about, was being said maybe before, but close to 273, and when those sages were sitting and hoping that it would be destroyed. Of course, then it was settled and became a Roman city. Yatev Rav Hamnuna kamed de'ula v'ka have bishma'ata. So Rav Hamnuna was sitting before Ula. That means he's a student in front of Ula, and he's studying some halachot. Amar ma gavra. So the teacher Ula says, "What a great man this is!" Right? Look at this Rav Hamnuna sitting and studying so nicely. Ilav harpanya me'ateh. If only he were not from Harpanya. Harpanya was a city where another one of these cities that the people from there were known to have problematic lineages. Maybe they're mamzerim or chalelim, who knows what. They would get together over there. So, says you would be really top notch, except you're from Harpanya, unfortunately. Ichsif, Rav Hamnuna was ashamed, right? Now his teacher said something negative about him. So we want to make him feel better. So wait, question, where do you pay your poll tax to? Every city, the people there has to pay poll tax to that city. And he says, I pay my poll tax to Pum Nahara. Another one, not Harpanya. In that case, your residence is in fact Pum Nahara, not Harpanya, so you're okay, right? And sometimes people live in a different place than they pay their taxes, at least part of the time. So that he made them feel better that he pays his tax to a place where the people are in fact kosher. Okay, my Harpanya. What's the problem with Harpanya? What happened there? Amar bizera har shakol ponin bo. So the name is a play on words. This is a mountain that all those people who have problems with lineage face there. They go there to find other people with problematic lineages, and then they can get a mamzed can marry a mamzedet. They can get married to each other there. And we have a baraita that says anyone who doesn't know can establish their family, tribe, and as therefore would have a problem marrying into other families, they can go there. Amad Ravavi Amukami Sheol says this place is worse than Sheol, than the underworld. Because after all, Hosea says, even those who go to the underworld who require punishment, nevertheless, Hashem will redeem them eventually. They go there for some time, get cleansed, and then they are redeemed. But those who are disqualified from marrying into the mainstream community, like mamzerim, that cannot be rectified. So it's even worse, right? To be a mamzer is worse than going to hell, literally, as it says here. Okay, this is an important statement. The reason behind mamzerut is that Torah wants to prevent adultery and other forms of illegal sexual relations. And so this is a very serious consequence. If someone does this, then their children forever are going to have problems. So this is an important deterrent to make sure people do not do that. The other side, the flip side of this, the negative part of it, is that those children who were born and didn't do anything wrong have to suffer their whole lives, and goes on forever, and is very difficult to rectify. And so this statement here is recognizing that the dire situation of those children. Okay, pesule de harpanya mishum pesule de meshon, said the meshon mishum pesule de talmud, that one mishum abde shelomo. Various places that have people with problematic lineages are all related to each other. Right, it all goes back to the servants of Shlomo, who were not Jewish and took Jewish women out there in Talmud and Palmyra, and so that caused the whole city of area of Palmyra to have problematic relationships, and those people in Palmyra and then went and spread and married the people of Meshon and caused problems there. And the people of Meshon then went and spread to Harpanya, and so the people of Harpanya are also considered under the assumption of disqualifications. Pesul could mean a halal, cannot marry Kohen, or it could refer to mamzerut, but each one of them spread from one city to the other. So, and that's the origin of the problems in these places. And in fact, there's a popular saying kabad abba vekabazuta migandad ve'azil lishol, both a large ephah and a small ephah, meaning a measuring utensil that's too big or too small. It's not useful. Whether it's too big or too small, it's not accurate, and therefore you have to throw it in the garbage, right? And so what do you do with it? It rolls down to the netherworld, right? Just send it to hell. But then it keeps rolling. So what's lower than the underworld? The city of Tamod. And what's lower than that? And so it gets worse and worse as it goes, because as people with mamzerut have children, then it spreads even more. So it gets, the worst is Harpanya, even though their problems are sourced from the Talmud. So Harpanya is the lowest of the low places. And that ends Hadran alach chamesh asre nashim. Okay, so that completes the first chapter, and now we begin the second chapter with a case that the Mishnah in the first chapter already discussed. It's interesting that the Mishnayot or the chapters of Mishnah overlap, flow right into one into the other. They're not separate topics. So Mishnah picks up on one of the cases in the first Mishnah. Kesed eshet achiv. Can you give us an example of how this would work? That two brothers that were not alive at the same time, if one of them was married and died without children, then the brother who was not alive at the same time would not do yibum. What's a case where not only would he not do yibum with her, but also the co-wife would also, he would not do yibum with the co-wife either. In order to find the co-wife situation, we have to add yet another brother to it. So it goes like this. Shnei achim, umet echad mehen, two brothers only, and one of them dies, simple case. V'nolad lahen ach. And then, in the meantime, while she's waiting to do yibum, a third brother is born. So this third brother is born after the first brother dies. And then the second brother does yibum for the first brother's wife, and he also dies, and he also has another wife. And that's the case where the first woman, the Gemara will discuss who's called first and second. So the first woman, the one who was married to the first guy, the first brother who died, she leaves altogether because that is brother's wife. In other words, the brother that was not yet born, because he was not yet born, he cannot do yibum. The Gemara will tell us why. Because he cannot do yibum, he's prohibited to her as sister-in-law. So therefore, that's simply adva, and therefore the co-wife who also fell to him from the second brother, who was the second brother's wife, is the co-wife of the Sarah. If you want to see a picture, we can see it here. Reuven is married to Esther. He dies without children. Esther falls to Shimon. Good. So he does yibum. He also then marries. It really doesn't matter the order. Was married or then marries another woman. So Shimon's married to two women. Unfortunately, he dies, and now Levi is called upon to do yibum. However, he was not alive when Reuven died, and so therefore he cannot do yibum or chalitza. He's excluded from the category altogether. Because he's excluded from the category of yibum, this remains his brother's wife, even though he wasn't alive, but doesn't matter, according to the majority opinion. So she is simply erva to him. So because Esther, Levi is erva to Esther, therefore this is sarat. Chana is sarat. Sarat erva is the co-wife of someone who's an erva, and therefore Levi does not do yibum or chalitza with either one. according to Bet Hillel, and that's the example in this Mishnah. Okay, now a subcase. Asa ba ma'amar vamet sheniya choleset velo mitya bemet. If this brother Shimon did not do full yibum, he did not cohabit with Esther, did not consummate the yibum, but he did what's called ma'amar. It's like the equivalent of kiddushin. The rabbi said, it's not nice for him to just go and have relations with her, like without any ceremony to begin. But before that, so they would do this ma'amar. Shimon would designate Esther to be his future Yevamot. He's going to do it. So when you do that, then it's already like they're kind of like engaged, although it's only to the banan, so not yet, not fully there. So in that case, and he dies before he gets to consummate. In that case, the second wife has to do chalitza and cannot do yibum. In other words, here, Levi still would be prohibited to Esther. The same reason. He was born after Reuven died, so he cannot do yibum. So she is permanently, forever, his brother's wife and prohibited. Okay, so he wouldn't do it he would not do that with her. Nevertheless, because Shimon did not actually complete Yibum, so he's not actually married to Esther. So Esther and Hannah are not yet, on the biblical level, they are not co-wives. And so therefore, if Shimon had just done Chalitza with Esther or another brother, whatever, then Levi could take Hannah, right? Because she is not the Sarav and Erva, because Shimon only did Ma'amad and not full Yibum. And so that's the second case of the Mishnah. All right, now the Gemara is going to discuss a couple of issues. One, a derivation that Yibum only applies for coexistent brothers and paternal brothers. They have to be paternal brothers and they have to be alive at the same time. What is the source? We're going to see a couple of sources for that. And then we're going to see, to discuss the case where the Yevamot dies while waiting. Would the Yavam be permitted to her mother? Rav Huna says yes. Rav Yehuda says no. Okay. Zamar Rav Nachman. Man detana rishona lo mishtabesh. Man detana sheniya lo mishtabes. Okay. Before that, we're just going to do a little bit of language discussion. There is another version of the Mishnah that switches the words. Instead of rishona here and sheniya here, it switches, calls this one sheniya and this one rishona. Rav Nachman says it makes no difference. None of them are mistaken. They both mean the same thing. It's just that you can refer to either one as the first or second, depending on what you mean by those words. One who calls the original wife, meaning Esther here, the first, she's called the first because she is the first to have to do Yibum, because Reuven died and he did Yibum first, right? And only then, when Shimon died, then Esther has to do it for a second time, and Hannah has to do Yibum too, also. But Esther is the first Yevamah. That's what that means. Uman tana sheniya la mishtabesh. La my sheniya the nisuin. And the one who says second is also correct, because Esther marries twice. So she marries Reuven and then marries Reuven. She's the second wife. Shimon marries Hannah first and then marries Esther. We're about to ask, wait a second, actually it doesn't matter. It could be that he takes Esther as Yibum first and then marries Hannah. So that's not actually a good answer. Wait, couldn't the case be equally talking about that he first did Yibum and then he married his other wife? So the wife of the first brother is not necessarily second in marriage. Rather, what I meant to say is she gets married a second time. She was married to Reuven, and now she remarries through Yibum Shimon. So she marries twice. Hannah only marries once, and that's why she is called the second wife. Okay, so the language the switch doesn't make any difference. Now, where does it say in the Torah that two brothers who were not coexistent, the law of Yibum does not apply? If two brothers are dwelling together, meaning they are alive at the same time. That they have one dwelling in the world. And this excludes the wife of a brother when the brother was never alive at the same time. This is an important law because practically, if it should happen that let's say a father has only one son, he marries and dies without children, so she theoretically could not get remarried until she was sure that her father-in-law will not have any more children, right? Even if he has, waits 50 years and in his old age he has another son, so then she will be required to wait till that son grows up and do yibum. So she will actually never. She'll be an aguda. She won't be able to get married until her father-in-law dies or becomes infertile. And so this would be very impractical to do, right? So it really only makes sense that she would do yibum. She's required to do yibum only with brothers that are alive at the time that her husband dies. Then she can assess who they are, what they're doing, how old they are, and one of them will do yibum, chalitza, and then she can go on with her life. Okay, yachdav miyuchadim benachala perat achiv min ha'em. Okay, yachdav, we learn another law from this word, that they have to be united, yachdav, in their inheritance. And so it has to be two brothers that will inherit together. And that means that they have to be paternal brothers, right? Because only sons inherit in the Torah law. So that would exclude maternal mothers. This makes sense because the whole reason for Yibum is so that the dead brother does not lose out on his share in the inheritance, so that therefore he has a son, a kind of surrogate legal son, who will inherit the father's land. And land in those days was a person's legacy, remembered by your land. And so that makes sense. It would only make sense if it was a brother from the father. Rabba Amad. Okay, all that is from Rav. However, Rabba gives a different derivation. Amad achin min ha'av yalef achba achba mibnei Yaakov. I'm going to learn it differently, not from the word yachta, but rather from achim. And because it says achim here, and it also says achim regarding the sons of Yaakov. Here we have the pasuk shenem asa, when they go in front of Yosef. All the brothers say, we are 12, anachnu achim bnei avinu ha'echadenu, and so on, right? So it calls them achim, and they have different mothers, and yet they're called achim. So you see the word achim over there means paternal brothers. Here too, where it says ki yeshivu achim yachtav, it means paternal brothers, and not maternal. V'lo min ha'em, v'afkan min ha'av v'lo min ha'em. Okay, now we have a question. Wait, once you're making a gezerah shava, let's see where else does the word brother appear? Well, it also appears regarding illegal relations. Here, ervat eshet achicha lo tegale ervat achicha hu. The wife of your brother, right? Do not take. This is a case of erva. So here it means your brother's wife. This is true both for a paternal and maternal brother. One may not take either of their wives. And so if we learn it from here, then yibum, we would say also with yibum applies also to maternal. Right? So why don't we do that? And we answer danim achim me'achim ben danim achim me'achicha. We're going to look for the exact same word regarding the sons of Yaakov. It says achim, and here keishvu achim, and we're not going to learn from a word that has a different form of achicha in arayot. Okay, well, and then we ask, wait a second, my nafkamina, what does it really make a difference if it's the exact same word? And now we're going to introduce a gezerah shava that we make, even though the words are substantially different. Regarding sarat of a house, says Veshava Kohen B'Yom HaShevi'i. Kohen, he has different stages of inspection. After 7 days, he returns to the house to see if the mold and the house spread, and then he will change out those bricks. and put new ones. And then Ubaha Kohen, he re-inspects it at some point later on to see if the Sara'at returned. The rabbis learn a Gezerah Shava, V'Shava Kohen, Ubaha Kohen. These are similar words. And they learn that just like he does this procedure of replacing the bricks the first time he comes, so it's not the first time. After 7 days, so too, he replaces the bricks when he comes again to try again to see if it will spread. And even though these are different words, shav, uba, they nevertheless make a gezerah shava. So we should be able to make a gezerah shava with achim and achicha. And our answer is, no. Hecha deleka mi hanemi lehecha deleka mi didamele. Okay, we only make a gezerah shava with two unlike words when there's nothing else that's like it. There is no other ubaha kohen, so then we will use something that is almost the same. But if we have an option, we have achim, and we can compare, and there is an exact parallel of achim, then for sure we're going to use achim with achim and not achim with achicha. That is not exactly the same. And so that's why we're going to learn achim and achim. Okay, good. So now we have two derivations. We're going to compare them. Ve'lelaf achva achva milot. Wait, more on this. Once you're learning from achim, the exact word achim does appear regarding lot. Tichtiv ke'anashim achim anachnu. And even though Avraham and Lot, that's uncle and nephew, and nevertheless it calls them achim. And so maybe we would achim yachtav, maybe Yibum would apply even to a more distant relationship, not even a brother. Okay, and so no, it makes more sense to compare achim to the sons of Yaakov, mishum demufneh, because that pasuk, the word achim is extra. It says, we are all your servants, the sons of a father. If you say that we are all sons of the same father, isn't it obvious that they're brothers? But you have an extra word achim, so you see that extra word is saying, hey, I'm here, right? I'm extra. You can point me to something else, look for another word achim, and I'll teach you something about what the word means there also. So this is extra, whereas the one in Bereshit is not extra. The one in Bereshit, although it says achim can mean biological brothers. It can also mean kinsmen, right? Someone from the same clan, someone related. So it has that looser definition there. Okay, so now we say, why do we need both derivations, right? With Rav Yehuda learned from Rav Yehuda and Rabbah. Rav Yehuda, name of Rav, right, learned from Yachtav, and Rabbah learned from Achim. And actually, we need both of them because either one by itself would not be sufficient. How so? If it just said the word achim, then I would say maybe that means an uncle and nephew, like it does in Lot. So achim by itself is not sufficient. וכתיב אחים, שמאמינה להפנויה כתב רחמנא לחדיו, המיוחדים בנחלה. And if you'll say, we actually answered this question already, and say, well, no, the one by Lot is not an extra word. No, indeed, it is an extra word, because you could have written there, re'im, right? Me and you, we are re'im. We are friends. We are acquaintances. It didn't have to say the word achim there, and so you can, an extra word doesn't have to be that the word is you could do without it. Even if you could use a different word that's a simpler word, and the Torah uses a more specific word, that also was considered extra. So from the word achim, I would not be able to learn that it has to be paternal brothers, and so that's why I have the word yachtav, only those who will inherit together. Okay. If it only said yachtav, maybe we think yachtav means special, those who are together, who share both parents, only full brothers, and maybe not half brothers at all. So that's why I need achim, not only full brothers, also achim like Yaakov, who are half brothers from paternal. Okay, now, hold on. Would you really think that you might require full brothers to do yibum. Yibum it just makes sense logically. I don't even need a derivation for that. The whole point of yibum is regarding inheritance. And inheritance comes from the father and not the mother. So why would anyone think that we require them to be maternal brothers? And the answer is so I might think, listen, the whole law of Yibum is a tremendous chidush. It's an exception to the rule of erva, of a brother's wife. And once something is an exception to the rule, you never know what other rules it is exceptional to. And so maybe it's so new that it can even override the logic. It doesn't go by the regular rules of logic. And so I need both words to tell me that it's not full brothers, but half brother from the father is sufficient to require yibum. Amarav Ehuna Amarav. Okay, so that concludes this topic of a derivation that Yibum only is for coexistent paternal brothers. And now we're going to ask a question about Yevamah who dies while waiting. Yevamah who's waiting is called Shomeret Yavam. She's waiting for her Yavam, right? There's no specific time period. Generally, the Yavam and Yevamah have to wait at least 3 months after the husband dies, because we want to make sure she's not pregnant from the previous marriage, in which case you couldn't do Yibum because since she has a child. But there's no specific time if it's going to be 4 months or 8 months. So while she's waiting, she dies. The Yevamah dies. Mutar be'imah, and now the Yavam, the brother, wants to marry her mother. So this would be his brother's mother-in-law. Okay, a brother's mother-in-law is not erva, is permitted. And so the point here is that even though he had a zikah, he had a relationship, he had an obligation to do yibum with her, but that zikah is not considered significant, right? Alma kasavar and zikah. So therefore, the responsibility to do yibum is not considered significant like a marital relation, because if it was like a marital relation, then one is prohibited from his wife's mother forever. Even after someone's wife dies, he may never take her mother. A mother-in-law is always prohibited, and so if it was like a marital type of obligation of connection, then it would be prohibited. But he says it's permitted. So you see that zikah is not significant. Now, velema halacha kedivrei haomer en zikah. And now we ask, why didn't he say? Why did he give a case? Why did he say in a case? Why didn't he say in a more abstract way? And he said, say halacha is like the opinion that says there is no zikah. Because we're going to see there is a Mishnah. Let's look at it now. In this regard, it's Mishnah down in Perek Dalid that discusses a case like this, and it says, "Ishto shemeta mutar bachota." If a woman, if a wife dies, the husband can take her sister. Right? You can't marry two sisters while both are alive, but once one dies, it's permitted. Other similar cases. But then it says, "Yivimto shemeta mutar bachota yevama." It doesn't say here what if he did yibum already. It sounds like he did yibum already. And she dies, then one can marry the sister because she died. Okay, the Gemara is going to take this to mean even if it's shomeret yavam, he can go and take her sister. Okay, so this is over there. There's a machloket whether there is zikah or not, and let me take a step back a second. We're going to get to this Mishnah in just a minute. But more relevant right now is the following Mishnah, also in Perek Dalad of Yevamot, that says, Shomeret Yavam shekidesh achiv et achota, a case where you have a Yevamah with several brothers. And let's say the oldest brother is planning on doing Yibum. In the meantime, another brother who actually could also do Yibum, instead goes and does Kiddushin with the sister of the Yevamah. So this is a problem. Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera amru omrim lo hamten ad sheyaseh achicha hagadol maaseh. So we tell the younger brother, hold on, don't do kiddushin just yet. Wait till your older brother does yibum or chalitza, and then you can go ahead and do kiddushin. The reason for him to wait is because he has a zikah. All the brothers have a zikah until one of them does something, and because he has a zikah with the yevamah, that zikah is considered something like a marital relation, and therefore would be prohibited to the Yevamah's sister. So because it does kiddushin with the Yevamah's sister while he still has a zikah with the Yevamah, that is a problem of marrying two sisters. So therefore we say wait till one of the brothers does yibum chalitza, or even if he himself would do chalitza, and only then you broke the connection with the Yevamah. Now you're free to marry the sister. Okay, so you see from here that this was the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, that zikah is considered something significant, but we infer that there's another opinion that says it is not significant. So you see, there's a machloket that we're going to learn about later on, about whether zikah, whether the responsibility of Yavam to Yavama is considered as if they were married, at least kind of temporarily until they decide if it's fully married or chalitza, and therefore, what if you say it is a zikah, then just like he is prohibited, just like a man would be prohibited to his mother-in-law, so too he would be prohibited to the Yevamah's mother even after she dies. It's only chalitza or another brother doing yibum that could break it, and so it never existed. But if she dies, then it was never fulfilled. It was never dissolved. That zikah was never dissolved, and therefore is permanently prohibited. So the fact that Rav Unah says, in the name of Rav says, is permitted to his mother means he thinks there's en zikah. If so, why not say simply en zikah? Why do you have to say that he is permitted to her mother? And the answer to that is, if he only said en zikah, I think there's no marital connection. I might have thought that's only when there are two or more brothers, since each brother, especially the younger brother, can say, oh, my older brother, he's going to take care of it. He has the zikah. I'm all right, right? I'm leaving it to him. And so then it's possible to say not. No zikah. But let's say there's only one brother, right? Would even that brother, would you say he has no zikah? And if she dies, he can marry her mother? Maybe not. So that's why he doesn't leave it open-ended and so just say halacha en zikah, because that would be ambiguous. Does he mean even if that maybe it's only with multiple brothers? So he says mutar be'ima, and no matter what, even if he's the only brother, it's permitted. Okay, so now if you want to be clearer, you could have been clear by adding a couple of words. Rav could have said the law follows he who says that connection is not a substantial connection, even if he's the only brother. No, if he said there's no zikah even with one, I would say that is true even if the Yevamah is alive and he has to do yibum with her, that he would be allowed to take his mother in marriage, because en zikah, even with one, there's no zikah at all. But that's not true. While she's alive, and the responsibility for yibum is just right there waiting for him. That's not true. So only after she dies, then yes, then we consider it fine. He can go marry his mother. But while she's alive, no. The reason is because you cannot do an action that will nullify the possibility of doing the mitzvah of yibum. If this yavam would take, and he's the only one, the only brother would take the mother, then he's prohibited from the daughter, and so he's doing something that would make him prohibited from performing yibum and nullifying a mitzvah. And so that everyone agrees that this would not be okay to do that. That's why he doesn't say in the more general way en zikah afilu bechad, which would sound like no matter what, there's no zikah at all, even while the Yevamah is alive. That's why he formulates it, and in the case that he does, to clarify. Good. Tenan, we're going to ask a question from the other Mishnah in Yevamot Perek Daled. Yivimto shemeta mutar ba'achota. Right here it says Yivimto shemeta, Yevama that dies, he can take the sister. So ba'achotain be'imahla. It sounds like he's only permitted to take her sister, right? Because even with full marriage, if the wife dies, you can take her sister. So ba'achotain be'imahla, but maybe not. But not mother. It doesn't say that if it was true with mother also, then say the case of mother, that once the Yevamah dies, he can take the mother. And we answer, no, no, in fact, if the Yevamah dies before they do Yibum, he can even take her mother. The reason why I said it this way is because the Resha of that Mishnah was talking about a case of full marriage, where it says a person is fully married to one woman and she dies, then he can take the sister. That's true only for sister, not for mother. One cannot take his mother-in-law ever, even after his wife dies. So since it was talking about a sister in that case, also in this case, which the Gemara is interpreting to mean a shomedet yavam, not a full, not after you do yibum, then it's fully a wife. So Yevimto is referring to a shomedet yavam, and she dies, then all permitted to her sister, and truth is, even permitted to her mother. So there's no question from that source. Okay, good. So all that was one opinion. But now we're going to see the second opinion that says if Yevamah dies while waiting, a Yavam is prohibited from taking her mother. This is the opinion of Rav Yehuda. And the whole discussion we just had, we're going to repeat just in the opposite direction. Since he says that even though she died, the Yavam may not take the mother, never. So that shows that the obligation for the Yavam to take the Yevamah is that connection is substantial, and it's as if they were married, and therefore he is forbidden to all of her relatives. Now, why does he say it? Why does Rav Yehuda formulate his law as a case law? Why didn't he just say that the halacha is like the opinion that says yesh zikah? Because we know there's a general machloket about that. Now, if he says yes zikah, maybe we would have thought he meant that there is a marital connection only when he's the only brother. So yeah, everything depends on him. But maybe they would agree that if there's two brothers, then there's not a substantial connection, because the younger brother could say, I was depending on my older brother. He would do yibum, so I can go ahead and do whatever I want. And so that's why he wanted to say it. And as a case law, that would make it clearer that it applies no matter how many brothers. And we say, no, that's not a good answer, because that Mishnah, Perek Dal Mishnah Tet, was talking about a case of multiple brothers, and that's the case where they were having the discussion. And so the one who says over there yesh zikah is saying yesh zikah even in a case of multiple brothers. So there's no way that we would have thought it's only true for one brother. Rather, let's re-explain what we would have thought in a different way. Mechaim aval achar mita pak'a la zika kamash malan de zika bichdi la pak'a. I might have said that this zika applies as long as the Yevamah is alive. But after her death, then I would say, oh, that's it. It leaves altogether. Right? In other words, even the one who says yesh zika, it's only when they're alive. And that was the case over there, right? Where they're alive and another brother wants to go and marry a sister while the Yevamah is alive. But I might have thought that even if you say yesh zika, that only applies when she's alive, but not after she's dead. So that's why I have to say that I have to give the case law. You'd have to give the case law of when she dies, that zikah does not just leave just because she died. It remains. It can be dissolved if they do yibum or chalitza. Yes. Then the brothers could marry a relative, or if you do chalitza, you could marry a relative. But it doesn't dissolve without doing Yibum or chalitza. Even death does not dissolve it. Okay, good. Mutar ba'achotain be'ima hala. Perhaps the other Mishnah here that we quoted, even toshemeta mutar, perhaps this would be a source before it was a challenge. Maybe this will be a proof for Rav Yehuda, because after all, it says that when after she dies, if the Yevamot dies, he may take the Yevamot's sister, only the Yevamot's sister, not her mother. And that supports Rav Yehuda's opinion. And we say, no, that's not a good proof. Really, he would be permitted, according to that Mishnah, even to the Yevamot's mother after she dies. Since the first half of the Mishnah talking about sisters, because only in the case of sisters, when a wife dies, one can marry the sister. That's only true for a sister, but not a mother, right? A mother-in-law is forever prohibited from the Torah. So that's why that's why the Baraita in the end mentioned sisters also. And so we can't learn anything one way or another from that Mishnah regarding the status of sisters. And tomorrow we will see further challenges to that opinion. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.